slash my compound and I'll give you the $50. Then you can give it to the beggar. And the little girl tells President Reagan, why doesn't the beggar go and slash your compound himself? And he earns that money. In other words, in this world, when you have earned your money, you really, really value it. And we need people to go to work. We want people to work, earn from their sweat. And anybody who has worked and earned money does not just want to part with it easily. And that's why people don't want governments on their backs. Now, General Saleh now has a fully fledged think tank around him. And there are many of you around here. Please stand up. The team of advisors. I see my uncle, General Idro there, the Honorable David Pulkol, and there are many others all over here. Now, connected to these people are the rest of you who I see debating very serious issues online. I've not yet had the courage to contribute because really the debate is high voltage. I'm a bit intimidated. Now, that is what this gathering is about. The purpose of the General's address is to identify the target, as you have said here. The last time we gathered, I advised people not to shoot with shotguns, because when you shoot with a shotgun, you injure many, but you kill none. So you injure many problems, but you solve none. You need to shoot with a rifle. And that is what the general is now interested in. And for that purpose, he has decided to camp in Gulu, my town. And targets have got to be realizable. You talked about Kennedy declaring that in our generation, America shall put a man on the moon. And they did. You also remember we once had a president here who also was fond of declaring targets. There was a time he said he was going to capture Golan Heights. He declared war on the apartheid regime in South Africa and organized jets to throw bombs in Lake Victoria as a rehearsal for capturing Cape Town. And during a dinner in London, not to be outdone by the Americans and their space endeavors, he announced that Uganda would now go to the sun in order to outdo America. And when he was asked by another dignitary at the table, how do you intend to do that, Your Excellency? Our beloved life president then said, we shall go there at night because the sun is very hot. Obviously, that attracted another heartfelt laughter bout. And then one commentator said, Your Excellency, you surely know how to blow your own trumpet. Again, not to be outdone, he stood up and said, no. I also play accordion. Obviously, he was not aware that blowing trumpets is a figure of speech. It has nothing to do with music. So, I'm glad the targets that we have here are said to be ideological. Our chairman has very strong beliefs. And in this world, we need believers, first and foremost. Because those who believe don't give up. That is what matters. One day, I had the courage to ask the president of Uganda a question. Mr. President, why do you keep going? Why don't you give up? He was amused by that question because it was in public. When he got up to speak, he said, Mao has asked me why I keep going. Then he said, I'm going to answer him. I keep going because I'm sure of where I want to go. I have no doubts. So we believe that all of us here are true believers in the future potential of Uganda. Whether we achieve everything we are talking about in our lifetime or not, our belief should be the common denominator bringing us together based on what is in our heart: love for our country, love for our fellow human being. And that is why this gathering is not just about degrees, how many PhDs you have, how many masters, and so on and so on. It is about here, which takes me to Cuba. Che Guevara, who you all know, was fond of being absent-minded in meetings. And he was in one meeting, and El Comandante Fidel Castro was speaking. On that day, on the agenda was to choose the chairman of the central bank, which we call a governor here. So Fidel Castro asked, "Do we have an economist in this meeting?" And the absent-minded chair put up his hand. And then Fidel Castro rebuked him. "Chair, you are not an economist at all." And then Chair said, "Sorry, El Comandante, I thought you had asked whether we have a communist in this meeting." And then the Honorable Kabakumba, where are you? The Honorable Kabakumba was a student in Sacred Heart. And apparently there was a young man in St. Joseph's College, Laibi, who admired her so much, but he had never spoken to her and had never met. It so happens that the Honorable Kabakumba was a topic of discussion in the boys' dormitory. So the question was, who would have the guts to talk to her? So one boy decided to write a letter in the name of Kabakumba. He wrote to himself and went and posted it, and then came to boast to his roommates that he had received a letter from Kabakumba. And for about a week, he was the most admired boy. Until another ambitious young man decided that this is too good to be true. So he went and stole the young man's exercise book, compared the handwriting with the alleged letter from Kabakumba, and found that they were exactly the same. So he was publicly humiliated. Now that is what self-deception is. You don't write to yourself a letter from a beautiful girl, because whether you believe it or not, it is untrue anyway. That's why not deceiving ourselves is very, very, very important. I welcome you on my own behalf, but you are going to receive a bigger welcome from our chairman. To the technical people, I put the question, is the general now online? He's supposed to speak to us online through connectivity. Please don't do to us what you did to Professor Muhumuza, or even worse. I understand Sarah Kajingo was one day giving a high-powered speech and was boasting about our success in the energy sector. We have these megawatts and so on, and then the power went off. I just wanted to say, Sarah, that's what they call punctuation. Your sentence got punctuated with a power outage. That's why we miss Umeme, because it was easier to curse. When power went off, you simply said, Umeme! But now, this thing of, how do you go about it? It is very difficult. Even Professor Kamuntu has failed to say it. I think we need people who talk very fast. UDCL, something like that. So is the general online now? UBC? I need first to be assured that, okay. It is very important that you understand why I'm the one inviting the general. Because the party I lead was in partnership with the National Resistance Movement, And yeah, and then divorced for 26 years. But during the time that we were working together, Uganda scored a lot. And that's why a country like ours should not waste human resources wherever it can be found. We must really collect human resources, and I wish to encourage our president to continue looking for capable people from wherever to come and work for Uganda. Because the economic miracle that we are celebrating, some of the foundations were built by the likes of Yoweri Chesimira, Ponciano Mulema, Robert Kitariko, Kafumbe Mukasa, Sebana Kizito, Zachary Olum. These were DPs. Unfortunately, they divorced after 10 years. And Norbert Mao has been quietly engaging, and we are now moving together again. Let's see whether we will also have miracles. Most probably the miracles will be in the field that I wish to quote, and I hope the general will comment on it. This is a quote: African countries can achieve economic stability and sustain rapid growth when they meet at least two interdependent conditions. They must establish and secure political framework rooted in moral integrity, as well as unleash the entrepreneurialism of the populace, facilitated by a free and democratic society. Guess who? Professor Ezra Sabiti Suruma. 2014, Brookings Institution. Get the book wherever you may find it. It tells the story of that period of recovery of Uganda, laying the foundation. It's now my singular honor to invite General Caleb Akandwanaho Salim Saleh, Chief Coordinator of Operation Wealth Creation, but for this purpose, our own Chairman of Uganda Development Forum. General, you have the floor. Let's welcome General with a round of applause.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Mao. Thank you, everybody who is in attendance. I warmly welcome you to the fourth edition of Musevenomics. I was challenged to study this form of economics by people who had cooked me, by NPA, National Planning Authority had cooked me. Then they made a PowerPoint presentation for me to deliver to the president. And it was made out of PowerPoint. So I delivered the note to the president. He read it and he took his time. And in March 2020, he answered me. And he said that whoever wants to discuss with him the economy of Uganda and Africa in general should answer those questions. And as you know, he's both a leader and a teacher. He asks questions and then he answers them. So he asked the 6 questions which are under discussion there at the conference. And I hope you will critique what he termed as the stimuli package that him and his colleagues, like Chairman Mao has talked about, Mulema, Chesimira, and others, what they had come up with in the economic adjustment program. So I'm not going to focus on the stimuli packages they used to resurrect the economy. I'm going to focus on one focus, one factor of production. And I will be asking the technical team, because now these days I use experts to create debates on my behalf. Now that factor of production, when we were sent into the field as OWC, we found it to be the most distorted factor of production, and that was land. So today, I will use the words of experts to illustrate this point to the conference so that you can get answers for what these experts were raising. Now, slide number 1 is composed of an advisory note from Amanda Ngabirano, who is the chairperson of the Physical Planning Board. She's asking, do we understand the land? President's office from a director there, Mr. Vincent, gave his own opinion of land use. And I think we need to go through them slowly so that we understand how do we distort, how do we remove the distortions from this major factor of production. Because all the stimuli packages that Musevenomics proposes, I think 80% of them or 60% of them are based on land. Now, if land is a distorted factor of production, then it distorts other areas. That's what we have been discussing now for almost 4 years. Then after that, I got a brief from the public agencies which are holding land, the land of Uganda in trust. A note has also been attached, not that one, the one of conservation. No, not that one. Yeah, that land under conservation, mainly in northern Uganda, where they clearly state that 4 million acres of land are under conservation, either NFA, UA, NEMA, Uganda Land Commission, through agencies of government. So that is slide number 4. Because I use experts, I don't have so much knowledge, but I use people who have knowledge to create discussion points for me. Then slide number 4 is an advisory note, actually for which I'm fundraising money for. Study who owns Kampala, who owns land in Kampala. It is that I have that advisory note from Professor John Chigula, and he's fundraising for money to make a concrete study so that we know who owns what land in Kampala, because it is becoming a big discussion point. Everybody thinks that I own half of Kampala when I have only, I think I have maximum 2 acres. And actually, if we were to ask the audience, how much land do you think KCCA owns? I don't know how many of them would get the right answer there. Then, interesting, the other week, I got a request from Internal Security Organization that they wanted to know how, when I came to own Kapeka and what I'm using the Kapeka land for. Imagine you get a note from the Internal Security asking you, how did you come to own this land? It's there, but don't show the budget they had attached for research. Now, these are very, very important questions for all of us. So, fortunately for me, the day when ISO came, I had very, very good answers for them because we had already studied carefully the history, the ownership, the utilization of that land in Kapeka called Namunkekera Council Estate. So for today, for me, I want to stimulate debate within that conference. We know the stimuli which were used to resurrect the economy. We know them, security of persons and property, privatization and liberalization, return of Asian properties, and all those. But for me, I wanted to challenge the conference, the fourth or fifth edition of UDF discussions, to specifically focus on this factor of land as a factor of production, and we see how we shall remove the distortions from that factor so that we are able to utilize it maximally. Because when you read what Dr. Amanda talks about, she says there is shortage, so we must do something. Then Vincent says we must do something, but we shouldn't touch land for conservation. Then these agencies which are holding land in trust on behalf of government are not maximizing the usage. And sometimes they are the ones who create conflicts on those lands. And then this Kampala, who owns land in Kampala, is a very interesting subject, which I think really needs to be studied, needs to be funded and studied. Then I will ask Engineer Chibuka, who is present there. He is my specialist on the conflicting of lands, especially that one of Kapeka. If he is given time, he is going to give you insights. That is what I wanted to discuss, because even in northern Uganda right now, the issue is land, the conflict between the Achoris and the what they call Valaro, or what we call migrant cattle keepers, is about land. So the keynote address, I think, is going to be given by Dr. Suruma, who was my leader when I was at the Ministry of Finance. And I think he is going to articulate all the other issues related to our attempt to reach out to the moneyless people. In the last 10 years, I have led a mission called OWC. It has not been a very easy mission because we were told to go and look for people who have never touched money. 68%. We struggled with inputs, with coffee, with tea, with all those inputs over that period. And statistically, they say we were able to reduce the people outside the money economy from 68% to about 39%. And recently, I hear even the poverty levels have gone even lower. So, dear participants and discussants, I request that you focus on the stimuli packages that were used, but you also help us to understand the land use balance sheet. Because if we do that, I think we shall devise means on how to utilize maximally that resource. Because the land is where minerals are best, land is where homesteads are best, that's where factories are best. So if it remains as distorted as it is today, that will not help us to achieve the 500-fold, 50-fold or 500? 50-fold, 10-fold growth. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you help me to answer that question and listen carefully to the rest of the presenters, We shall produce a very big report out of this conference, and it will be helpful to us to look into the future. Because we have been discussing with the academia, with the private sector, with the ordinary mwananchi, and we are just trying to put together the economic history of Uganda, and it is very, very interesting. Because from what we have been able to read, the first development plan of Uganda as a protectorate was 1946. Now, 40 years later, in 1986, that is when NRM came to power, and they hired some experts under the IDRC, International Development Research Center from Canada. And as Chairman Mao said at that time, if you look at the list of cabinet ministers who were the first cabinet of our liberation, 60% 60% of them were from DP. So I have been arguing with Chairman Mao, what caused the divorce? Because the divorce happened when I was here in Gulu, 1996. But I think Chairman Mao is the one who caused that divorce, because that time he was really like fire. And I don't know whether he will agree with me. But now, 2022, we went back into an alliance with them, which was very, very good for me, because for me, I never liked the separation of those people whom we had worked with for 10 concrete years. And in those 10 years when we were working together, I think that's when Uganda was recording double-digit growth. But when we started fragmenting, that's when we got a lot of issues. So he's my vice chairperson in UDF, in think tanking, and we are doing very good work. So I wish him the best in his delegates conference. And I want to thank the Ministry of Finance. I want to thank the Uganda Development Corporation and all the agencies that have supported OWC to get to the ordinary mwananchi. We are very excited that we participated in this revolution of reducing the people who are outside the money economy, and we hope we can completely eliminate it in the next 5 to 10 years. Thank you very much for listening to me. I'm sorry I couldn't come to Kampala because Kampala is a bit troubled. So Gulu is more calmer than Kampala. That's why I stay in Gulu. It has a calmer atmosphere. And I invite all of you that the next conference that we are going to hold should be held in Gulu here. Thank you very much for listening to me. I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our chairman, General Kerebu Akandwa, now retired Salim Saleh, for those remarks. I think as you have heard, the critical point he has raised is the real term we use is the constrained land market. And he's saying that the land market needs to therefore be freed. And this one, obviously, we know how the land market is constrained. And of course, land is a premier factor of production. So there is nothing that you can do without land. He has also brought out other factors, particularly of production, but particularly the premier factor. In fact, other people call it the most primitive factor of production, which is land, is so fundamental that we needed to do something about it. You remember the president has been wanting to do something about it. We did a very big study, I remember, with the people in Makerere, University of Nairobi, University of London, to do something on land. Let me repeat this. Let me say this as we conclude this session. There is no country in the world out of 192 countries. I've done a study for 126 of them, and I was using projective techniques. Projective techniques is a methodology you use backwards to see what happened with people who are not similar with you. But about what did they do that for you didn't do? So I did 126 countries, and those countries did two things, all of them. The first one is freeing the land market.